I was sitting in a cafe with my daughter and son-in-law when a strange woman quietly placed an envelope in front of me and said, "Open it tonight." When I finally opened it, a truth about my own family came out that changed everything. I was seeing the envelope for the first time when it still hadn't been opened, but for some reason I already felt that whatever was inside it would divide my life into two parts, before and after. We were sitting in a small cafe in Chicago. Light snow was falling outside and the windows were fogged over with a thin white haze. My daughter, Emily, was texting someone on her phone while my son-in-law, Mark, had gone to the counter to pay the bill. I held my coffee cup in both hands even though the cafe was warm. My hands had developed a habit of staying cold ever since my husband died 3 years earlier. After Daniel passed away, bills, loans, and the mortgage had piled up so quickly that the anxiety never really left my body. Just then a shadow stopped beside our table. I looked up. A woman stood there. She looked to be around 50. She wore a long coat and a dark scarf, and her eyes had the strange look of someone who had been watching me for a long time. She didn't introduce herself. She simply slid a thick envelope across the table toward me. Then she spoke quietly. "Open it tonight." That was all. I opened my mouth to ask something, but she had already turned away. The cafe door opened, cold air rushed in, and within seconds she disappeared into the falling snow. Mark returned and I quickly slipped the envelope into my purse. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just a little tired." Without looking up from her phone, Emily said, "Mom, you really should see a doctor." I smiled and brushed it off. But the truth was, something inside my chest had started beating in a strange, uneasy rhythm. Later that night, I sat alone in my small apartment. The place was quiet in the way homes become quiet after too many hard years. I placed the envelope on the kitchen table and stared at it for several minutes before finally opening it. Inside were 3 things. Some old documents, a USB drive, and a small handwritten note. The note contained only one sentence. "You deserve to know the truth." My heart began pounding. I picked up the documents first. The moment I read the first page, my breath caught in my throat. It was a life insurance policy under my husband Daniel's name. Amount, $500,000. And in the box labeled beneficiary, the name written there was not mine. It was Emily Carter, my daughter. I gripped the back of the chair to steady myself. No one had ever told me about this policy. After Daniel died, I had sold our house just to pay off debts. I moved into a cheap apartment and took a part-time job at a grocery store. Some weeks I barely managed to keep the lights on. This money existed. Where had it gone? My hands were shaking when I plugged the USB drive into my computer. There was only one file on it. A video. I pressed play. The screen showed what looked like a small office. Probably a lawyer's office. A desk, a couple of chairs, neutral walls. A moment later the door opened. And Emily walked in. My daughter. She sat down across from a man I didn't recognize. The man said calmly, "We just need confirmation that you'd like the funds released immediately." Emily smiled. "Yes," she said. "My mom doesn't know anything about this. And honestly, it's better if she doesn't." My breathing stopped. She continued casually. "If she got that money, she'd never learn to stand on her own. She needs to struggle a little." Someone in the room let out a quiet laugh. The video ended. I sat there staring at the screen long after it went dark. Something inside my chest felt like it had shattered. After Daniel died, what had I done? I worked 2 jobs at one point. I sold my wedding ring. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I could count. And my daughter knew everything. The next day I was stocking shelves at the grocery store when my phone rang. "Emily." "Mom," she said cheerfully, "we're having dinner Sunday. You're coming, right?" "Yes," I said. My voice sounded so calm that it surprised even me. Sunday evening I arrived at their house. It was a big, beautiful place in a quiet neighborhood. Mark had a good position at his company and it showed. The house was new, bright, comfortable. Dinner was already on the table. Emily looked happy. Mark opened a beer while we sat down. For a while the evening felt almost normal. Then about 30 minutes into dinner, Emily suddenly said, "Mom, have you thought about retirement? You can't work at that grocery store forever." Mark chuckled. "Well," he added, "maybe you could always move into our basement." They both laughed lightly as if it were harmless. I slowly placed my phone on the table. There's something I want to show you, I said. Emily frowned slightly. What is it? I pressed play. Within 10 seconds the color drained from her face. Mark leaned closer to the phone. What am I looking at? The room fell completely silent. The video continued playing. Emily on the screen. The lawyer. Her voice. When it ended, the silence became even heavier. For the first time that night, I looked directly into my daughter's eyes. You thought I would never find out? I asked. Emily swallowed hard. Mom, it was complicated. I shook my head slowly. No, I said quietly. It was actually very simple. I pushed my chair back and stood up. For 3 years I lived under debt. I sold everything I had. And you decided I needed to struggle. There was anger inside me. But strangely there was also something else. Freedom. I walked toward the front door. Behind me I heard Emily's voice, shaky and desperate. Mom, please. I stopped. But I didn't turn around. I think you got your wish, I said calmly. You wanted me to become strong. Don't worry about that anymore. Then I stepped outside. The cold night air hit my face. For the first time in years I realized that the thing that had broken inside me had also rebuilt something new. A few days later I received a call from a lawyer. The woman who had given me the envelope turned out to be Daniel's former business partner. She had discovered the insurance transfer and believed I deserved to know. With her help the case was reopened. I didn't recover the full amount. But I received enough to finally breathe again. Instead of going back to the life I had before, I used part of the money to start something small. A little bakery stand near a weekend market. Every morning I wake up early and knead dough with my own hands. The smell of fresh bread fills the air while the city slowly wakes around me. Sometimes when the kitchen is quiet I remember that night. The envelope. And the moment I realized something important. Sometimes a life doesn't begin when everything is perfect. Sometimes it begins the moment everything finally breaks. If this story touched your heart or kept you thinking until the end, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful stories like this one. Thank you sincerely for watching and being part of this community.